My husband taught him a lesson, said my daughter when I sat down at the table with a broken arm. Thanksgiving Eve. The table was full. The laughter was loud, and I sat there with a broken arm, unable to even lift a fork. My daughter's guests went silent when they saw me struggling. Then, in that uncomfortable pause, my daughter calmly said, "My husband taught him a lesson." Her husband smirked, proud and unashamed. "The old man thought he was the boss here," he said, raising his glass. So I proved him wrong. I just smiled. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and that smile never left my face. He froze, confused, because a father's revenge never announces itself. It arrives quietly, and justice never forgets traitors. The sound of that doorbell still echoes in my memory. At that time, I had been in my study, surrounded by old Coast Guard investigation files, 2 decades of maritime reports neatly organized across my desk. Afternoon light filtered through the window, catching the dust as it drifted in slow motion. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Lula stood there, arms outstretched in a hug that felt rehearsed. "Dad, surprise," she said brightly. Behind her was Ralph, her husband, eyes on his phone, body language detached. When I stepped aside to let them in, he finally looked up and muttered, "Hope we're not interrupting, Mr. Gray." That Mr. Gray always grated on me. After 7 years, the formality felt like a wall he refused to lower. "Come in," I said. My living room still looked the same. Photos of lighthouses, cargo vessels, the USS Constitution. My favorite leather chair faced the window overlooking the street. They took the couch. I stayed standing. I knew there was a reason for this visit. "We have something for you," Lula said finally. She pulled a cream envelope from her oversized purse and slid it across the coffee table. Inside were brochures bright with tropical blues and white sands. Caribbean Pearl, 7-day cruise, 3 passengers. I studied the papers carefully, the way I once examined cargo manifests for hidden contraband. "That's quite an investment," I said. "You deserve it." "Dad," Lula smiled, too wide, too forced. "We've been planning this for weeks," Ralph leaned forward. "Your birthday only comes once a year. We wanted to do something meaningful." I placed the brochures down gently. "You're both very generous," I said slowly. "Though I do recall a conversation about car repairs 6 months ago." Lula let out a brittle laugh. "That's taken care of. We've been saving specifically for this. Right, Ralph?" "Absolutely," he replied too quickly, like someone reading from a script. "Insurance business has been solid lately." I nodded, but inside I didn't believe a word of it. I knew his agency was struggling. I'd seen the overdue notice fall out of Lula's purse last Christmas, the one she grabbed with trembling hands and flushed cheeks. "When does it leave?" I asked, moving toward the kitchen to give myself room to think. "Saturday morning," Lula said eagerly. "From Miami. 2 days from now, perfect timing." I filled the kettle, buying a few seconds of silence. "I have a notary appointment Wednesday," I mentioned casually. "Estate planning review. Nothing urgent." That stopped Ralph cold. His coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Lula's eyes darted toward him, then back to me. "Reschedule it," she said too quickly. "Dad, honestly, estate planning can wait. This deal expires tomorrow. The price goes up after that." Ralph added, "Yeah, these offers don't last." His voice dropped an octave. Calm, but with something cold in it. I leaned against the counter, studying them both. "When did you book this trip?" Lula hesitated, then said, "Last week. We wanted it to be a surprise." "Last week," I repeated quietly, watching their faces. "I see." They both looked nervous. The more I studied them, the clearer it became. This wasn't a gift. It was an arrangement. Finally, I smiled. "Fine," I said. "I'll go." Lula's relief was immediate, almost too real. "Really? Oh, Dad, you're going to love it. Quality time together, just the 3 of us." Ralph was already on his feet. "We'll send you the details tonight. Departure's 9 a.m. sharp, don't be late." As I watched them walk down the porch steps, Lula turned back. "Thank you for saying yes," she said softly. "I know we've had rough patches lately." "Family is family," I replied, because that's what people say when the truth is too dangerous. Ralph lingered by the car, staring at my house, eyes scanning the structure like a man taking inventory. My windows, my balcony, even the landscaping. When our eyes met, something flickered behind his expression. Something that made my old investigator instincts flare alive. When they finally drove off, I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. The warm August air couldn't chase away the cold feeling that had settled inside me. Back in my study, I sat among the files. 3 decades of analyzing patterns had taught me one thing: trust the details that don't fit. I opened a small notebook from my drawer and began to write. Expensive envelope. Ralph's 4 glances at his watch. Lula's trembling hands tension at the mention of the notary. Cabin arrangements, adjacent but not identical. I paused before the final note. They need me on that ship specifically. The question is why. That night I packed slowly. Casual clothes, neutral colors, nothing that would stand out. The notebook slipped into the side pocket of my bag. Old habits die hard. By morning I was on the highway. The sky was gray, the world still half asleep. My truck hummed beneath me. The thermos of coffee steady in the cup holder, GPS set for the port of Miami. The notebook rested on the passenger seat, open to Thursday's notes. I reread them every few miles, the words etched deeper into my mind. When I reached the terminal, the place was chaos. Families shouting, kids running, luggage rolling in all directions. Then I saw her, Lula waving, all smiles. "Dad!" Ralph stood beside her, phone pressed to his ear, shoulders tense. When he noticed me, his conversation ended instantly. "Work trouble?" I asked. He forced a thin smile. "Nothing that can't wait until we're back." Lula linked her arm through mine. "Isn't this exciting? I've never been on a cruise before." "Neither have I said. At check-in, she kept me close, interrupting politely whenever someone tried to start a conversation. "Dad, we need to find our cabins." The ship's enormous. I noticed everything: the crew members' crisp uniform, the faint scent of disinfectant, the perfect efficiency. He led them to cabin 9-2. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, your interior room." Then he guided me 2 doors down. "Mr. Gray, cabin 914, exterior private balcony." I stepped inside. The room was compact, almost sterile. I slid open the balcony door. It moved too smoothly, almost like it had been oiled recently. I stepped outside, gripping the railing. The ocean stretched below, an endless, cold waiting. Standard railing height, maybe 42 inches. I leaned slightly forward, my investigator's mind taking over. Something about this trip didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a setup. And if they thought the old man was the fool at the table, they were about to learn what it means when a father decides to teach his lesson. The balcony stretched nearly 50 feet above the dark waves, maybe more. "Enjoying the view already?" Ralph's voice came from the doorway behind me. "Quite a drop," he said, watching as I tested the railing. "Solid construction," I replied, gripping the cold metal. "Hope you'll take advantage of the fresh air," he added. "Really breathe in the ocean." Something in his tone felt rehearsed, too measured to be casual. "I'm sure I will," I said quietly, stepping back inside. His eyes followed my every move until he finally left. Once alone, I inspected everything. The door lock, standard magnetic key system. Balcony access, from inside only. Sliding mechanism, weak security. The neighboring cabins, 913 and 915, were dark and unoccupied. Isolated, perfectly positioned. The afternoon drifted by in mandatory safety drills. During the muster drill, while passengers fumbled with life jackets, I saw Ralph slip away toward the upper deck. Old instincts kicked in. I followed, keeping distance. On deck 11, he was pacing near the railing, phone pressed to his ear. "Everything's set for Monday night," he said, frustration in his voice. Then, "No, she's committed. Stop questioning me." He turned suddenly and froze when he saw me. Whatever he read in my eyes made his jaw tighten. "Captain concerns?" I asked casually, nodding toward his phone. "Insurance company," he muttered. "Always some crisis." He brushed past me, heading back down. I stayed there, watching Miami's skyline shrink as the ship began to move. Monday night. 2 days away. That evening, the formal dining room glittered with chandeliers and soft music. Ralph ordered a $30 cocktail and barely touched it. Lula picked at her salmon, quiet and distracted. Then Ralph leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "That notary appointment you mentioned. What's the status of your will?" Lula's fork clattered. "Ralph, what kind of question is that?" He ignored her, and eyes fixed on me. "Who's listed as the primary beneficiary?" "That's confidential," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "We're family," he pressed. Surely Lula inherits. She's your only child. His smile was thin, lifeless. Estate planning's complicated, I said. But yes, at your age, you might want things finalized. He wouldn't let it go. Lula deserves to know what her future holds. Ralph, please, she whispered. Can we just enjoy dinner? I studied him. Failed business ventures, mounting debts, and now a sudden fascination with my will. The pattern was too clear. I stood up. I'll review everything when we return, I said. If you'll excuse me, the seafood isn't sitting well. Back in my cabin, I opened my notebook and began to write. Ralph's phone calls, his questions, the cabin's layout. Details forming like coordinates on a nautical chart. I couldn't sleep. Around 11, I stepped onto the deck. The night air was sharp, the ocean endless and black beneath the moonlight. Then I saw them. Ralph and Lula standing at my railing, 30 feet away. He was gesturing toward the water, explaining something. Lula's arms were folded tight across her chest. My footsteps made no sound as I approached. 20 feet, 15. Ralph turned. Lula jumped. Couldn't sleep, I asked. Dad, you scared us, she said, voice trembling. Ralph recovered faster. Just getting air. Enjoying the night view. I stepped to where they'd been standing and looked down. Dark water, no lights, no witnesses. Quite a perspective from this height, I said softly. We should get back, Lula said quickly. It's late. I think I'll stay a while. Ralph gripped her elbow. She needs rest. Early excursion tomorrow in Nassau. I didn't book any excursion, I noted. You should relax on the ship, Lula said too quickly. They left together. I stayed by the railing, staring down at the black waves. Monday night. 2 days. Inside, I wedged a chair under the balcony door handle. A makeshift barricade. Set my alarm for 6. Opened the notebook again. Each word I wrote felt heavier. Monday night. 2 days. Sleep never came. By dawn, I was already dressed, the barricade still in place. At 7, I walked the promenade deck, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the sea in gold and rose. Then I heard it. Inspector Gray, I turned. A man in captain's whites approached. Familiar face, steady gaze. Captain Marcus Webb. Marcus, I said, shaking his hand. 15 years since you inspected the Atlantic venture, he said. You earned that commendation. Your protocol saved lives, I replied. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Wilbert, listen carefully. You need to leave this ship, and any way you can. Your son-in-law is planning. Footsteps cut him off. Ralph rounded the corner in jogging clothes, towel around his neck, eyes sharp. Marcus straightened instantly. Enjoy your breakfast, Mr. Gray, he said, saluting before walking away. Morning exercise? Ralph asked, breathing heavy. Just watching the sunrise. Captain's a friendly man. What was he saying to you? Ralph pressed. That the buffet opens at 7:30, I said calmly. Care to join me? He hesitated. Lula's still asleep. I'll see you at lunch. He jogged off therein, but looked back twice. That afternoon I pretended to read by the pool. Ralph appeared with Lula, taking a table nearby. An elderly man sat beside them, reading a newspaper. Ralph spoke loudly, too deliberately. Terrible story from last cruise season. Passenger went overboard at night. The old man looked up. How dreadful. They think he'd been drinking, Ralph continued. Leaning over to look at the stars. One wrong move and he was gone. Ship moves fast. No one even noticed until it was too late. I froze. He was rehearsing the story, planting the idea of how an old man might fall. Lula sat motionless beside him, hands clenched around her phone. Reminds you to be careful, the old man said. Absolutely, Ralph replied, eyes locking with mine across the deck. 3 seconds. Then he looked away. I returned to my cabin. The chair was still wedged under the door. I added to my notes, Marcus's warning, Ralph's rehearsal, the tightening timeline. By 11 that night, a soft knock came at my door. Through the peephole, Marcus alone, pale. He slipped inside quickly, checking the hall before closing the door. I'm risking my command being here, he said. His hands trembled. But I can't let this happen. Start from the beginning, I told him. Early Sunday morning, he began pacing. I was on the bridge, the standard duty. I heard voices below, unusual for that hour. I moved closer. He swallowed hard. It was your daughter and her husband. My heart turned to stone. What did they say? Your son-in-law said Monday night was better. Too many variables tonight. during the formal dinner and we make sure he drinks plenty. Then we suggest going on deck for fresh air, a photo under the stars. She distracts him. I push him, quick, clean. He stopped, voice breaking. And your daughter? She asked, what if someone sees? He laughed, said nobody would, that you'd be the grieving family. A tragic accident. I stood and looked out the window, the sea below, black and endless. 2 days ago, I thought this cruise was a vacation. Now it was a countdown. What else? Marcus asked quietly. She wanted to know how long until the insurance pays out. The words hit me like physical blows. That's when I realized she wasn't just complicit, she was in it, fully, actively participating. Everything I'd been documenting suddenly fell into place like a completed puzzle. The sudden gift of a luxury cruise, the separate cabin with balcony access, Ralph's casual questions about my will, and that poolside story about accidental drownings. None of it was random. It was all deliberate, calculated. I turned to Marcus. Why tell me this? You could lose everything. He met my eyes without hesitation. 15 years ago, you could have failed me on that inspection. One bad report would have ended my career before it even started. But you didn't. You saw I was trying to do things right, and you gave me that chance. He straightened his posture, voice steady now. You earned that, Wilbert. But now it's my turn. I can't let a man die when I have the power to stop it. If I say nothing and you die tomorrow night, that makes me complicit. That's criminal negligence, and at the very least. I sat back, thinking through logistics, risk, timing. What are you suggesting? Getting you off this ship before tomorrow night. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. I have connections. Maritime networks run deep. If I can arrange a passenger transfer mid-ocean or under medical pretenses, it's been done before. You'd do that? I asked. I'd do a lot more to prevent a murder on my ship, Marcus said firmly. Will you trust me? I thought of Lula as a little girl. Her gap-toothed smile, scraped knees, and the unshakable belief that her father could fix anything. Then I thought of Ralph, cold, deliberate, calculating. And I thought of tomorrow night. Dark water, a scream that would come too late. Yes, I said finally. I'll trust you. Give me 30 minutes, he said, heading for the door. Stay in your cabin. Don't open it for anyone but me. His hand paused on the handle. I'll find a way, Wilbert. I promise. The door closed. Silence returned. I looked at the chair wedged against the balcony door. Checked my watch. 11:48 p.m. Tomorrow night was the scheduled murder. Less than 24 hours left. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote, Monday night formal dinner, approximately 24 hours. Then I waited. 28 long minutes, I couldn't sit still. The seconds felt heavy, loud. I paced the narrow cabin, 6 steps wall to wall, staring at the family photograph on my desk. Lula, 8 years old, missing her front tooth, my arm wrapped around her shoulders. That little girl had trusted me completely. The woman she became wanted me dead. A soft knock broke the silence. I opened the door before Marcus could finish the second knock. I found a way, he said, stepping inside quickly and locking the door. He was energized, alive, running on adrenaline. There's a cargo vessel 15 nautical miles north, Nordic Star, heading to Nassau. I know the captain, Thomas Brennan. We worked together 5 years ago. And you told him what? Just enough, Marcus replied. Medical emergency requiring transfer to a vessel with better facilities. He didn't ask questions. He pulled a notepad from his uniform pocket, flipping through handwritten notes. Here's the plan. Around 3 a.m., we'll move you to the medical bay. The cover story is severe food poisoning, specifically from the raw oyster bar yesterday. That explains isolation, restricted visitors, and why we need to transfer you. I absorbed it like a professional reviewing an operation. What if Ralph and Lula demand to see me? Standard quarantine protocol, Marcus said. Foodborne illness means temporary isolation. No visitors until you're cleared. His calm precision was reassuring. By the time we dock in Nassau, he continued, they'll realize you're gone. But by then, you'll already be waiting for them there. What about your career? I asked quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened. If I stay silent and you die, I'm complicit in murder. I'd rather risk my command than live with that. You're putting yourself in danger for me. You gave me my career. I'm trying to save your life. We're even. He checked his watch. 2 hours until we move. Pack light, documents, wallet, phone. Nothing that suggests you're leaving permanently. We need them to believe you're returning after treatment. I moved automatically. Passport, wallet, charger, notebook. Then I paused. What should I tell them? Marcus pointed at the stationery pad on the desk. Keep it simple. Illness, medical transfer, reassurance. I wrote and rewrote until it felt right. Lula woke up feeling terrible around 2 a.m. Must have been the seafood at dinner. The ship's doctor recommended transferring me to another vessel with better facilities. Don't worry, I'll meet you in Nassau. Rest and enjoy the cruise. My pen hesitated over the closing. Marcus said nothing. Finally, I signed it. Love, Dad. The word felt like betrayal, but it had to sound real. Marcus folded the note carefully. I'll make sure she gets this after you're gone. He continued briskly. At 3 a.m., the doctor and an assistant will arrive. Act the part, weak but stable. Can you do that? 30 years of reading body language, I said. Projecting it won't be a problem. Good. He stood. Lock this door behind me. Don't open it for anyone unless they say, Inspector Gray, it's time for your breakfast. That's the password. He paused at the door. Try to rest. You'll need your strength. After he left, I stared at the photograph again. 3 decades of investigation had taught me to read liars, to see motives behind masks. Yet I'd missed the deception inside my own family until it almost killed me. I turned the photo face down. Time to survive. At 2:57 a.m., a soft voice came through the door. Inspector Gray, it's time for your breakfast. I unlocked it. Dr. Patel, the ship's physician, entered first. Calm, professional, middle-aged. Behind her, a young medical assistant wheeled in a transport chair. Mr. Gray, I'm Dr. Patel. The captain explained your symptoms. She checked my pulse. We're transferring you to Nordic Star for better equipment. Suspected bacterial food poisoning, I let my voice falter. Thank you, doctor. Into the chair, please. We'll keep you comfortable. They wheeled me through the silent corridors, service passages and crew decks I'd never seen. No luxury here, only metal, cables, and the faint hum of machinery. In the medical bay, they ran through the motions, blood pressure, temperature, paperwork. By the time Marcus arrived at 4:10, everything was ready. Nordic Star is in position, he said. Weather's stable. Let's proceed. The journey to the lower deck was surreal. Passengers slept above, unaware that one of them was escaping his own execution. The sea air hit my face, salt and diesel. The tenderboat waited, engine idling. Marcus gripped my shoulder. Captain Brennan will take good care of you. Stay in Nassau until we arrive, then decide your next move. Thank you, Marcus. Send word when you're safe. The tender roared to life. As we pulled away, I watched the cruise ship fade into the distance. That floating palace carrying my daughter and her husband, both certain they'd already won. By dawn, the Nordic Star loomed ahead and a massive cargo vessel, rusted but proud. Its crew pulled me aboard with firm, honest hands. Captain Brennan met me on deck, a gray beard, sharp eyes. Marcus said medical emergency, he said. But you don't move like a sick man. The illness was strategic, wasn't it? It was necessary, I said. He nodded. Then you'll have no problem here. Coffee's bad, but it's hot. I smiled faintly. I appreciate honesty. So do I, he said. Get some rest. Nassau's 8 hours away, but I didn't rest. I stood at the railing, watching the Caribbean Pearl disappear into the horizon. By sunrise, I opened my notebook again. Evidence, insurance policy, motive, witness testimony, and Marcus Webb, physical evidence, cabin location, timeline, plan. And one final word underlined twice. Nassau. That's where everything would end. When we docked, I called an old ally, maritime attorney Harriet Donovan. She listened as I told her everything. Do you have witnesses? She asked. Captain Webb, I said. He overheard their plan. Good. That's your cornerstone. But gather more. Record them if you can. By the time I met her contact, private investigator James Cromwell, Nassau was awake, bright, and oblivious. You want surveillance? Cromwell said, eyes sharp. You want their reaction when they realize you're alive. That's right. They might try again. They will, I said, and I'll be ready. Within hours, Cromwell's contact and a crewman named Stewart planted a hidden camera in my former cabin. When I accessed the live feed, the room was empty. The barricaded balcony door still stood. Then, just after 1 o'clock, the door opened. Ralph entered first, scanning the room like a predator. Lula followed, holding my note. She read it aloud, voice trembling. He's really sick. We should find him. Ralph snatched the paper. That cunning old fox. He stopped mid-sentence. You could almost see the realization dawn in his eyes. The plan had failed. Lula sat heavily on the bed. What do we do now? Ralph started pacing, running his hands through his hair. And as I watched from a small cafe in Nassau, I knew one thing for certain. The hunter had just become the hunted. I'd never seen him this agitated. We adapt. Nassau works better anyway. We can stage something there, a robbery gone wrong. Tourists get killed. It happens, Ralph. No, maybe we should just what? He spun on her. Give up the money, the house, everything we planned. After 3 months of preparation, she flinched. I can't do this anymore. Yes, you can, he said, crouching to grip her shoulders. Because if we don't, we lose everything. The debt collectors don't care about your feelings. I watched them, cataloging every word, every gesture. Cromwell appeared beside me, laptop open. Getting all this? I asked quietly. Every frame, he replied. Your daughter seems conflicted. She's still complicit, I muttered. My phone rang.
Harriet, I answered, eyes on the screen where Ralph was now testing the balcony door.
Checking its security. Wilbert, my research assistant, found something, Harriet said, her voice tight with grim satisfaction. 3 months ago, May 15th, a life insurance policy was taken out on you. $500,000, my chest tightened. I never signed any policy. I know. The signature is forged. I compared it to your actual Coast Guard documents. And the agent? Ralph Morrison, licensed with Maritime Benefit Insurance. He used his position to fast-track approval and listed your daughter as the beneficiary to avoid suspicion. This isn't desperation. This is calculated, premeditated murder for financial gain. On the screen, Ralph left the cabin, Lula trailing behind him like a ghost. Frustration, fear, determination, all of it visible on their faces. Send me the documentation, policy numbers, application copies, everything. Already done. Check your email. Harriet's tone softened slightly. How are you holding up? Functional. That's sufficient. After we disconnected, I reviewed the insurance documents on my phone. Ralph's handwriting on the agent notes, my forged signature on the application, Lula listed as sole beneficiary. 3 months of planning reduced to paper trails and digital records. Cromwell closed his laptop. You've got enough for prosecution. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, multiple felonies. Not yet, I said, meeting his eyes. I want them to incriminate themselves further. I want absolute certainty. They're planning another attempt in Nassau. That's dangerous. In public spaces with witnesses, they won't risk it, Cromwell noted. I checked my watch. Caribbean Pearl would dock in 45 minutes. Besides, I'm done hiding. Time they understand exactly what they're dealing with. Cromwell studied me with professional curiosity. You're going to wait for them on the dock? I want to see their faces when they realize I'm alive and well. Bold strategy, sure, but I'll adapt, I said, pocketing my phone. We moved to the cruise terminal as the massive hull of the Caribbean Pearl appeared in the harbor. Passengers crowded the rails, waving to those on shore. I positioned myself where they'd see me immediately. Cromwell set up 20 feet away, camera ready but trained on nothing in particular. The gangway extended and passengers began to stream down. Families, couples, tourists, all ordinary faces, all irrelevant. Then I saw them. Lula in her bright sundress, unmistakable. Ralph beside her, casual shirt, dark sunglasses. They moved slowly, scanning the dock, tension visible even from this distance. They hadn't seen me yet. I stepped forward, hand raised in greeting. Lula, Ralph, over here. Lula turned, face draining of every shade of color. Her mouth opened, no sound. She grabbed Ralph's forearm with visible force. Ralph's body went rigid, jaw clenched, sunglasses masking his eyes. I kept my hand raised, expression pleasant. 20 feet away, Cromwell's camera captured it all. Finally, Lula moved first, legs carrying her forward. When she reached me, her embrace felt mechanical, stiff, trembling. Dad, her voice cracked. We thought the note said you were sick. I recovered beautifully. The doctor on the Nordic Star was excellent, treated me like his own father. Ralph approached more slowly, hand extended. You recovered remarkably fast. Modern medicine works wonders. Aren't you glad to see me? I held his gaze through the sunglasses. Of course, he said mechanically. We walked through customs into Nassau's humid embrace. "You could have called," Ralph said, "navigating pedestrian traffic. Wanted to surprise you. Besides, phone service on cargo ships is terrible, all that metal." I pointed toward a restaurant overlooking the harbor. "There. The grouper is exceptional." Throughout lunch, I maintained cheerful conversation, asking about their days aboard, sharing stories from my cargo vessel experience, discussing Nassau's history. Ralph barely touched his food. Lula pushed rice around her plate, struggling to swallow. As coffee arrived, I set down my glass. "I purchased 3 tickets for Caribbean Pearl's return voyage to Miami. Departs Friday morning." "That's not necessary. We can fly back." "Nonsense. We came by ship. We return by ship." I smiled at Lula. "Family vacation isn't complete until we're all back together, right?" "Right. Of course, Dad," she whispered. Over the next 3 days, I orchestrated every moment. At the straw market, we bought matching sun hats for photos. At Cable Beach, endless selfies, me between them, forcing smiles. Their expressions grew brittle. Lula developed a nervous habit of picking at her nails. Ralph's patience frayed, snapping at restaurant staff, obsessively checking his phone. I appeared before they could strategize, cheerfully suggesting the next activity, maintaining relentless proximity. Each moment controlled, each moment documented. Thursday night, our final evening before boarding, I insisted on dinner at a harbor restaurant with outdoor seating. Caribbean Pearl glowed in the distance like a floating city. I raised my glass. "Family is what matters most," I said. Ralph and Lula lifted their glasses reluctantly. The toast felt like an accusation wrapped in sincerity. Friday morning, we boarded the ship. I arranged 3 interior cabins along a central corridor. No balconies, no isolated access points. Ralph questioned it. I explained with practiced innocence. "After that food poisoning, I prefer being near other people." He didn't respond, only tested locks and angles. His calculations revealed nothing. The ship departed Nassau at noon. I positioned myself inside, never on the rails. Ralph and Lula remained isolated, staring at phones, lost in their thoughts. My phone buzzed. Text from Harriet. "Evidence package complete. Insurance fraud documentation, forged signatures, witness statements, surveillance recordings. 3 days at sea. Then Miami. Then consequences." Ralph's voice stopped me as I passed him toward the dining room. "Enjoy dinner, Wilbert, while you can." I didn't turn. I kept walking, hand in pocket, phone holding every recorded threat, every piece of evidence, every mistake. The parking lot outside Miami's terminal was chaotic. I watched them approach. "Thank you for the cruise," I said, hugging Lula gently, her body stiff against mine. Ralph's handshake was brief, fingers cold. "Let's do it again sometime," she offered hollowly. "Actually, let's get together soon," I said casually. "I'd like to discuss some family matters." Ralph's eyes sharpened behind sunglasses. "What kind of matters?" "Better discussed at home." "I'll call you." I smiled warmly as they walked to their car. Once they left, I drove east into downtown Miami. Harriet Donovan's office occupied the 10th floor of a glass tower. The conference room was ready, coffee brewing. Large monitor displaying the files Cromwell transmitted. "Let's see what we have," she said, gesturing toward the document spread like evidence at a crime scene. We started with the cabin recording. Ralph's voice. "Stage a robbery in Nassau. Tourists die here all the time. Single-party consent?" I asked. Harriet explained that the cabin was my private space, fully admissible. Next, the insurance documents. My forged signature. Clearly different from my Coast Guard retirement papers. The cruise footage showed Ralph testing the balcony outside my cabin, calculating stress points. Conspiracy, premeditation, murder. Harriet ticked off the charges. Attempted murder, insurance fraud combined, 25 to 30 years. "We could go to the police today," I said. "Absolutely," she replied, then paused. "But I don't want to." "I suspected as much," I said. "Invite them over. Announce I'm changing my will. Everything to the Coast Guard Veterans Fund. If their motive is financial, they'll react desperately. I want them to hire someone. Absolute proof of intent." "You're using yourself as bait," Harriet said. "I've been bait since they booked that cruise. The difference now, I control the environment. Evidence in hand. Law enforcement ready to intervene." By late afternoon, arrangements were complete. GPS trackers on their vehicles. Emergency wiretap authorization approved. Evidence secured. Cameras installed in my house. Every room except bathrooms, feeds encrypted. As the sun set over Biscayne Bay, molten orange on the water, I made the call. "Hi, Dad." Lula's voice sounded weary. "Lula, I'd like you and Ralph to come by tomorrow at 6. Important family matters." After disconnecting, Harriet replayed the call. Hesitation pronounced. Fear palpable. I drove home reviewing my plan. Every word tomorrow mattered. The tone would be kind, apologetic, firm, immovable. Phase 3 begins. The trap is set. Midnight. I positioned furniture, checked camera angles, rehearsed my lines, made the house look casually domestic. Lemonade ready, glasses in place. Tomorrow they would see exactly what happens when greed meets calculated resolve. Technically, it was Monday now. In just 18 hours, Ralph and Lula would sit in this very room, and I would deliver the words designed to push them toward their final, fatal mistake. I turned off the lights, letting the cameras continue recording in darkness, their tiny red indicators blinking like distant stars. Monday evening settled in with that heavy Florida humidity, thick enough to almost touch. I adjusted the lemonade pitcher one last time, checked that the glasses were naturally arranged on the coffee table, and glanced at my watch, 5:45. Through the window, I saw their car turn into the driveway. Early arrival usually meant anxiety, eagerness, or both. I opened the door before they could knock. "Come in. I just made fresh lemonade." Lula tried to hug me. I accepted it, feeling her tremble slightly. Ralph offered nothing, hands firmly in his pockets. They settled onto the sofa exactly as I'd anticipated. I poured lemonade, handed them glasses, and took my chair across from them. The leather creaked familiarly beneath me. "You said this was important," Ralph said, skipping any pretense of small talk. "About estate planning?" I asked. "Yes." I set my glass down with deliberate care. The cruise gave me time to think about legacy, about what really matters. I've made a decision I want to share with both of you. I'm changing my will. My entire estate, house, savings, investments, everything, will go to the Coast Guard Veterans Fund. They do critical work supporting retired service members, and I want my legacy to serve that purpose. Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. "What?" Lula's voice was barely a whisper. Ralph's face darkened, a flush creeping from his collar upward. "You're cutting us out completely," he said. "You're both capable adults. You can build your own lives," I said, holding Ralph's gaze. "This is the right decision." "Dad," Lula leaned forward, hands clasped in pleading. "We were counting on—" "Lula," Ralph interrupted sharply, gripping her wrist. The warning was clear. I observed with apparent concern, knowing every detail was captured on camera. "I understand this is disappointing," I continued, voice gentle, almost apologetic. "But it's my estate, my choice. I'm meeting with my notary Thursday morning, August 29th, to finalize the paperwork. I wanted to tell you first as a courtesy to family." Ralph's voice was flat. 3 days from now," he said, more calculation than question. "Yes," I replied with a faint smile. "I hope in time you'll understand." Ralph stood abruptly, nearly toppling his glass. "We're leaving." "But Dad—" Lula started. Ralph pulled her up by the arm, leaving pale marks on her skin. I followed them to the door, maintaining my sympathetic expression. "I know this isn't what you want to hear," I said. Ralph turned at the threshold, his face a mask barely containing fury. "Oh, we hear you clearly, Wilbert." They walked to their car. I watched from the window as they paused, motionless, before Ralph started the engine. My phone buzzed. Cromwell's text, car audio active. "Recording clear. Sending feed now." I opened the encrypted link he provided. Ralph's voice erupted through the speakers. $800,000 just gone to some. Profanity flew as his fist slammed the steering wheel. "Maybe we can talk to him," Lula sobbed. "Talk? Do you think talking matters now?" Ralph's voice shook with rage. "He knows we need that money." "He knows." Ralph started the car, tires screeching as he accelerated away. I sat back, monitoring the surveillance feed. Cromwell's vehicle followed discreetly, keeping them in view. 2 slow hours passed. I made dinner mechanically while keeping an eye on my phone. Around 8 p.m., an alert from the wiretap system lit up the screen. Ralph's phone was on a live call. I opened the transcript feed. "Ralph. I need a job done fast before Thursday." Unknown male. What kind of job? Ralph, elderly man, lives alone. Make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Unknown male. That's not cheap. Ralph, $20,000. Unknown male, $25,000. Ralph, $15,000. Half now, half after completion. Unknown male. Make it $18 total, 9 and 9. Ralph, fine, $18,000. The transcript continued. Ralph provided my address, the timeline, every detail. My hands stayed steady, but something cold settled in my chest. My own son-in-law arranging my murder like ordering routine plumbing work. Harriet, tell me you're seeing this, I whispered into the phone. I'm watching, she replied, voice a mix of satisfaction and concern. Clear solicitation of murder. Premeditated conspiracy. We have everything. Time to bring in law enforcement, agreed. I called Detective Frank Reyes. Detective Reyes speaking, his voice was professional, cautious. My name is Wilbert Gray. I have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and solicitation of murder for hire. I need to meet with you immediately. Mr. Gray, I get a lot of calls like this. I have a court-authorized wiretap recording from tonight. I interrupted. I have audio of my son-in-law hiring someone to kill me before Thursday. Surveillance footage from a cruise ship, a forged insurance policy for $500,000, and an attorney coordinating everything. Silence. Then, your attorney's name? Harriet Donovan. Maritime Law, Miami. I know her. She's legitimate. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., Pinella County Sheriff's Office, Largo, bring everything. I spent the night preparing. Printed the forged insurance policy, saved Captain Marcus Webb's notarized statement, the cabin recording, cruise ship surveillance, wiretap transcript. I created a binder, organized, indexed, tab-separated by evidence type. Decades as a federal inspector taught me the value of thorough documentation. This was the most important case I'd ever built, and it was against my own family. By nearly midnight, I was ready. In 8 hours, I would walk into the sheriff's office with a complete investigation. Ralph and Lula Morrison would face justice for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and solicitation of murder for hire. I sat in my leather chair, cameras recording me in darkness. 63 years old, survived my own family's attempt on my life, built the case to destroy them. The trap would close tomorrow. Thursday morning came too slowly, too quickly. At 5:45 a.m., I sat in my car, 2 blocks from their house, the arrest briefing sheet beside me. Unmarked police vehicles surrounded the property. My phone buzzed. 5 minutes. Stay put until we signal. At exactly 6 mi, Reyes's team moved. Officers approached, authority in every step. They knocked. Lights flipped on inside. Another knock, harder. Police, open the door. Lula appeared in a bathrobe, hair disheveled, hand flying to her mouth as her face drained of color. Ralph appeared behind her, bare-chested, sweatpants, eyes widening, then narrowing with calculation. Ralph Morrison, Lula Gray Morrison. You are both under arrest, Reyes announced. Hands where I can see them. For what? Ralph managed. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, solicitation of murder for hire. Reyes listed. The charges landed like blows. Neighbors' lights flicked on as officers led them to separate vehicles. Lula's voice cracked, reaching toward me. Dad, please. This is wrong. I stayed silent. I had already heard her voice on the recordings. I had already seen the evidence. Reyes stepped between us. Enough. In the car. At the sheriff's office, they were processed, fingerprinted, photographed. Evidence was presented to Ralph's attorney. The cabin recording, the wiretap Vinnie Cordero's statement, mall surveillance footage, forged insurance policy, Captain Webb's testimony, cruise crew footage. The attorney went pale. Ralph's rigid composure finally shattered. By mid-morning, formal charges were filed. The prosecutor held a press conference detailing the foiled murder, cruise ship plot, and attempted contract killing. Bail was set high. Ralph $250,000, Lula $150,000. Neither could pay. They were remanded to jail pending trial. 2 weeks later, I sat in Harriet Donovan's office signing the new will. Everything went to the Coast Guard Veterans Fund. House, savings, investments, roughly $850,000. Lula would inherit nothing. I returned home. The surveillance equipment removed. The house felt emptier, quieter, even though nothing had physically changed. I stood at the living room window. looking at the Gulf of Mexico. Same sun, same waves, but everything else had changed. My daughter was in jail, her husband facing decades of imprisonment. My life's work would help veterans instead of family who tried to kill me. I picked up a photograph from the mantel. Lula at 8, missing her front teeth, my arm around her. I looked at it once, then set it face down. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. Justice had been served. Not the warmth of revenge, but the cold, necessary certainty that consequences had arrived where they belonged. I closed the blinds, turned away, and continued living. Something far more than Ralph and Lula had planned for me. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To watch the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.